we gather ourselves and turn toward worship. Be careful with your mute button over the course of the service because you may have the capacity to unmute yourself. And we do this not to be rude or because it wouldn't be wonderful to hear each other's voices raised in song or in our shared readings or anything. That would be wonderful. But the chaos and the cacophony makes things just too difficult. I have to find and make Era a co-host. And it turns out to be tricky because the screen keeps moving as people join, but I have succeeded. And if my co-hosts will continue to admit the many people who are joining us, including names I do not recognize and a few faces that I think I was seeing for the first time, the warmest of welcomes to you if you've just found our online worship here at a wonderful, progressive, and inclusive spiritual community that wishes it was meeting in person, but is instead found here in virtual space. And thank goodness for it. I don't know about you, but how wonderful that we get to actually look at each other's faces and hear each other's voices a little bit as we gather. If it is your first time here or you've been just coming recently, a couple bits of news. One, we will be scheduling another round of Getting to Know You, which is our orientation class and part of the process that might ultimately lead to membership. That'll happen in a multi-part session online in February. There'll be more news about that. If you want to get news about the congregation, we have a Facebook page. Our website is kept up to date on the front page about events and activities and so on. So be sure to sign on that. Whatever your background, race, sexual orientation, gender identity, anything that other folks might want to divide us with, we want to set those things down and be together in a community that celebrates life, empowers people, cares for one another, and helps to build a better world. And all are welcome in that project. A couple other bits of news. Could say this in the Milestones too, I will, but if you had trouble getting through here in the office, Kenyatta's husband had surgery this week, and then quite unexpectedly, Kenyatta had a medical emergency as well and had to have her thyroid removed. She's been in the hospital since last week, so you might not get an answer to an email or a phone call in the next few days. I've been in close contact with her and she's doing very well in her recovery. So we'll pray for Kenyatta when we come around to the pastoral prayer. Keep your eyes peeled through the various sources and for emails about some activities called listening circles that will be coming up soon. This is related to our membership in the North Bay Organizing Project, which will be holding an issues assembly on Saturday, March 6th from 10 to 12. Everybody invited. You'll get more info about that. This is a community organization that we're a part of that does justice work in the wide world. And every so often we reconvene and rethink the issues that we have been most focused on to try and target things that are practical and winnable and that are born of the interests, fears, and angers of the member organizations like ours. So a few different people will make time for people to come together for conversations about what's causing you concern and making you angry in our civic life locally. And then the North Bay Organizing Project will go and try and make a difference on that. Hey, we actually finally got new carpet. And if we could spotlight Tamara's screen, yeah, here she goes. She'll show you what it looks like. Oh, nice. Kind of vines and leaves, but very abstract, and it matches the purple walls, and it goes all the way into the copy room where we're building new mailboxes and so forth. A lot of people worked hard to make that happen. Our operations team, thanks everybody for doing that. Yay. And I think that's just about everything. Most of you, I trust, read emails from me or found on the Facebook page my announcement that I'll be leaving the ministry of the congregation at the end of July, I assume, if the whole process unfolds the way that it's kind of supposed to with the denomination. I see your thumbs down, Sally. Thank you kindly. I'm glad I can only see a few faces at a time right now. It makes it a little easier to bear. If you want to talk with me about that, I will stick around after the service. The service will end. I'll throw you out into breakout rooms for a few minutes of chit chat with each other. That's like 5 or 7 minutes just to say hi to someone and make a new friend. And then we'll come back. If you want to stick around and ask me anything, I'm here for you. And then that will conclude, and Mary Wolf hosts coffee hour at 12:30, and the link is all fine on the website. That's the easiest way for you to get there if you want even more fellowship after the service. Those are the announcements. And so we're ready to worship together. You might take a deep breath. I don't know how that happened. Take a deep breath and let's listen to music and bring ourselves into that space where we are open to the spirit of love and life flowing through and between us.
Our chalice will be lit this morning by Reverend Chris. Gentle flame, we see you quiver, unsure of where the next gust of wind may take you. Yet you burn with courage. Guide us with your fearless light. May we step forward today, knowing that whatever may come, no matter how hard the wind blows, the fire of our soul and of spirit shall never go out.
Nor ever be lit, apparently.
This land is your land, this land is my land. From California to the New York Island, from the redwood forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. As I was walking that ribbon of highway, I saw above me that endless skyway. I saw below me that golden valley. This land was made for you and me. I've roamed and rambled, and I followed my footsteps to the sparkling sands of her diamond deserts. And all around me a voice was sounding. This land was made for you and me. This land is your land, this land is my land. From California to the New York Island, from the redwood forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. When the sun came shining and I was strolling, and the wheat fields waving, and the dust clouds rolling, and the fog was lifting, a voice was chanting. This land was made for you and me. As I went walking, I saw a sign there, and on the sign it said no trespassing. But on the other side, it didn't say nothing. That side was made for you and me. This land is your land, this land is my land. From California to the New York Island, from the redwood forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. In the shadow of the steeple, I saw my people. By the relief office, I've seen my people. As they stood there hungry, I stood there asking, is this land made for you and me? Nobody living can ever stop me as I go walking that freedom highway. Nobody living can ever make me turn back. This land was made for you and me. This land is your land, this land is my land. From California to the New York Island, from the redwood forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. This land is your land, this land is my land. From California to the New York Island, from the redwood forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. This land was made for you and me.
I first saw that at the memorial service for the Hagemans. It was one of Tess Hageman's favorite songs, and I don't even know where that version came from. So God bless whoever made that complete and perfect sing-along for us to celebrate these days. I certainly celebrated, as many did on Wednesday, when Amanda Gorman, the Youth Poet Laureate of the United States, stepped up to demonstrate all of the hope and promise of our country coming out of times and still in the midst of times of enormous fear and uncertainty. And though it is hubris and maybe inappropriate, I'm just going to read you her poem again. This is one for, people to memorize maybe for the future. And I'm going to share the screen and you can read along. Heck, you can read it out loud along if you want to. Can everybody see that? The hill we climb. When day comes, we ask ourselves, where can we find light in this never-ending shade? The loss we carry, a sea we must wade. We've braved the belly of the beast. We've learned that quiet isn't always peace, and the norms and notions of what just isn't always justice. And yet the dawn is ours before we knew it. Somehow we do it. Somehow we've weathered and witnessed a nation that isn't broken, but simply unfinished. We, the successors of a country and a time where a skinny black girl descended from slaves and raised by a single mother can dream of becoming president. May it be so! Only to find herself reciting for one. And yes, we are far from polished, far from pristine, but that doesn't mean we are striving to form a union that is perfect. We are striving to forge a union with purpose, to compose a country committed to all cultures, colors, characters, and conditions of man. And so we lift our gazes, not to what stands between us, but to what stands before us. We close the divide because we know to put our future first, we must put our differences aside. We lay down our arms so we can reach out our arms to one another. We seek harm to none and harmony to all. Let the globe, if nothing else, say this is true. That even as we grieved, we grew. That even as we hurt, we hoped. That even as we tired, we tried. That we'll forever be tied together, victorious, not because we will never again know defeat, but because we will never again sow division. Scripture tells us to envision that everyone shall sit down under their own vine and fig tree, and no one shall make them afraid. If we're to live up to our own time, then victory won't lie in the blade, but in all the bridges we've made. That is the promised glade, the hill we climb, if only we dare. It's because being American is more than a pride we inherit. It's the past we step into and how we repair it. We've seen a force that would shatter our nation rather than share it, would destroy our country if it meant delaying democracy, and this effort very nearly succeeded. But while democracy can be periodically delayed, it can never be permanently defeated. In this truth, in this faith we trust, for while we have our eyes on the future, history has its eyes on us. This is the era of just redemption we feared at its inception. We did not feel prepared to be the heirs of such a terrifying hour, but within it we found the power to author a new chapter, to offer hope and laughter to ourselves. So while once we asked, how could we possibly prevail over catastrophe? Now we assert, how could catastrophe possibly prevail over us? We will not march back to what was, but move to what shall be, a country that is bruised but whole, benevolent but bold, fierce and free. We will not be turned around or interrupted by intimidation, because we know our inaction and inertia will be the inheritance of the next generation. Our blunders become their burdens. But one thing is certain. If we merge mercy with might and might with right, then love becomes our legacy and change our children's birthright. If we merge mercy with might and might with right, then love becomes our legacy and changes our children's birthright. So let us leave behind a country better than the one we were left with. Every breath from my bronze-pounded chest, we will raise this wounded world into a wondrous one. We will rise from the gold-limbed hills of the West. We will rise from the wind-swept Northeast, where our forefathers first realized revolution. We will rise from the lake-rimmed cities of the Midwestern states. We will rise from the sun-baked South. We will rebuild, reconcile, and recover, and every known nook of our nation and every corner called our country, our people, diverse and beautiful, will emerge, battered and beautiful. When day comes, we step out of the shade, aflame and unafraid. The new dawn blooms as we free it, for there is always light, if only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it.
One each person is worthwhile, to be kind in all you do. Three, let's help each other grow, for keep searching for the true. Five, each person has a say. Six, for a peaceful world. Seven, unravel that's a way that will bring us back to you, you.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome once again to Time for All Ages. My name is Eric Capone, and I am the Director of Religious Education here at UUCSR. Today in RE this morning, the kids of our congregation talked about possibility. They found common household items and made them anew, turning bowls and hats and piles of Legos into incredible spaceships. To be honest, it was mostly talking about Legos. They demonstrated their ability to see endless potential in things, and it was exhilarating. They had the power to reinvent the world around them through creativity. Now, some might say that the kids in RE this morning demonstrated the ability to think outside the box. They took the mundane and made it fantastic, and that would surely qualify as outside the box thinking, right? Well, I want to posit the opposite to you today. The kids of RE showed their creativity this morning by thinking inside the box. It was a limitation that allowed their creativity to shine. Let me give you an example. If I handed you a blank piece of paper and told you, be creative, what would you do? My guess is that most of you would stare at it, too anxious to actually create something out of fear that it's not creative enough. But what if I gave you that same piece of paper and right before you started to do something with it, I poured coffee all over it? Suddenly, you have a frame of reference, a starting point. I bet right now you could think of myriad ways to turn a coffee stain into art. But more importantly, you have pressure taken off of you. The paper has been stained. It's already imperfect, so it's okay if what you make is imperfect too. There's a phrase that I hold dear to my heart. It's restrictions breed creativity. Restrictions, boundaries, limitations, all these things give us safety to explore our own minds and ideas with the knowledge that there are some things we cannot do, or we'll have to come up with a novel solution to. Today, we're talking about coping with fear, and I think one of the best ways we can deal with fear is to acknowledge our own limitations. Every day we wake up and we can either choose to succumb to the countless existential crises that fill our world, or we can do what is within our power to change them. And look at what we do within our own power. We create art. We talk to one another. We choose to find love and connection, because at the end of the day, all we can be is ourselves, and that will always be more than enough. When the kids of RE this morning were turning cups into spyglasses, they were showing the potential in their own possessions, but what they were doing was so much more than that. They were showing that limitations are what bring out the best in us, because they show us that what we already are is amazing. Today, we read the story Maybe by Kobi Yamada and illustrated by Gabriella Barouch. This wonderful story reminds us of the potential in us all and is a graceful reminder that no matter what, we will always be enough. I'd like to share that story with you now. Maybe by Kobi Yamada. Have you ever wondered why you are here? You are the only you there ever has been or ever will be. You have so much to offer. Maybe you will invent something that no one has ever seen before. Maybe you will build things that reach high into the sky. Your life is yours. Try as many things as you can try. See as much as you can see. Wherever you go, take your hopes, pack your dreams, and never forget, it is on journeys that discoveries are made. Maybe you will help others to see the beauty in each day. Or maybe you will lift cheering crowds onto their feet. Do everything with love. Follow your heart and see where it leads you. Maybe you are here to shine a light into places that have been dark for far too long. Maybe you will speak up for those who can't speak for themselves. Maybe you are here to help in ways that only you can. There will be struggles, there will be fears, and it won't always be easy. At times it will feel really hard, and you might make a mess of things. You may fall down. You may fail. But you will also get back up, and you will rise a little stronger and a little taller, because there really is more inside you than you know, and this world needs your gifts, your talents, your big ideas. And maybe you are just getting started. What if you are only scratching the surface of what you can do and who you can be? What if you have talents you haven't discovered yet? There is something powerful, even magical, about you. You already have everything it takes to do big things. Maybe you have no idea just how good you really can be, and maybe you don't know how much you matter. But maybe, just maybe, the world has been waiting centuries for someone exactly like you. One thing is for sure, you are here, And because you are here, anything is possible. Thank you, everyone. I love that sentiment. The world has been waiting centuries for all of us. And before we go, let us affirm in unison. We are Unitarian Universalists, people of the open minds, the loving hearts, and the helping hands. Thank you.
Absolutely wonderful. Thank you, Era. We now come to that point in our service where we express our creativity and imagination through acts of generosity. And by supporting an organization out in the community or a good cause, everything we collect this morning will go today to a group called Food for All in the Sonoma Valley. You're about to watch a video that will tell you everything you need to know about them. One thing that they humbly don't mention is that their activities are primarily in the Sonoma Valley in places like Agua Caliente, which have been among the hardest hit by COVID in our community. And so they're not just taking care of people who are hungry, they're taking people who are quarantined or dealing with COVID or caring for family members or whatever it might be. So this is about as frontline as you can get. So let's hear from some of the volunteers. It's an all-volunteer organization, and every last bit of money that we give them today will go directly toward feeding people. I'll put up a link in the chat that might be the easiest way to connect with their website, but if you search Food for All, you'll surely find it. You can also get there through our website by donating to the Sunday Morning Organization on the Giving page. Let's learn about Food for All.
Food is really a human right.
Hola, buenos días. Mi nombre es Jerónimo Batas.
Hello, my name is Bob Gossett. I'm a retired teacher from Sonoma Valley Unified School District.
Buenos días, mi nombre es Liz Páez. Soy una voluntaria de comida para todos y lo hago porque me gusta ayudar a la comunidad. Hago ser voluntaria porque me gusta ayudar a mi comunidad.
We're all a part of the community. We volunteer because we care about the families that we're serving.
Es un placer para mí ser voluntaria del programa Comida para Todos, ya que es un programa que ayuda a toda la comunidad.
I do this because this is justice work. It's a human right. It's things that people have the right to have.
Desde muy pequeño mi madre me enseñó que siempre hay que compartir con los que están menos afortunados.
The team here at Food for All saw a need in our community.
Tiene los productos bien básicos como papel, jabón, toallitas húmedas, los pañales.
I can't imagine going through this and not being able to afford food or basic needs.
It's our obligation here on earth to make sure that all of our neighbors and our friends and our community are able to eat.
Access to food and housing insecurities are huge issues in our community and have been for a very long time, and the pandemic has only exacerbated that.
I'm doing this because it brings me hope during a time when things are really hard. It means a lot to know that I can actually reach out to my community and affect them positively.
I'm here with Food for All because I think this is one of the most amazing programs. I experienced food insecurity as a young person.
I think that the situation that we're living through can only be overcome if we do it together.
And people helping people is the only thing that ever really makes change. So I'm here to give back to my community.
And I think that that is what Comida para Todos is really all about. When I found out that I had a chance to support it, I came the first Food for All distribution, and I've come back every time.
It's very simple. No one should be hungry in our country.
Thanks to our advocates for social justice for bringing that great group to our attention. The link is in the chat. In anticipation of what I know will be the generous gifts we offer, would you please join me in reading our offering dedication? To the work of creating beloved community within and beyond our walls, we dedicate these offerings and ourselves.
Good morning. I'm Tamara Merle, one of your lay chaplains. Milestones are where we share our joys and sorrows with the congregation. You're invited to light a candle to remember those you are holding near to your hearts. These are the milestones for this week. From Peggy Spofford. On Tuesday, my daughter Karen, a veterinarian at Windsor Animal Hospital, was notified that a technician she worked with on Sunday was notified of COVID-19 infection. So Karen is in a 10-day quarantine, and since I gave her a hug yesterday morning, I am too. Neither of us are showing any symptoms. Keep us in your thoughts for a safe and successful 10 days. Lan Chan reports, I've a request from Jo Caton, who moved to Texas with her husband, Jim. She was the one who planted the seed for our family to come to UUCSR. She was the piano teacher for our children for many years. She would like to let the congregation know that her dear husband, Jim, passed away last Sunday. They were married for 42 years. His struggle with increasing disability is over. And a tender memory from Stephanie Reed. Yesterday, Saturday, January 24th, I remember my son Robin, who took his life off the Golden Gate Bridge on this day 26 years ago. I send him my love. If you have something to share with all or a private concern to talk over with a lay chaplain, please contact us at laychaplains@uusantarosa.org. We give thanks for the sharing of these milestones, for how they remind us of our shared humanity and our common fate, and inspire our compassion and care. May all your joys be magnified as we delight together in the good news. May all our sorrows be eased as we carry them together in community. May you who are searching for courage, comfort, faith, and hope find what you seek. And may all people grow in wisdom, compassion, and love, that the whole world might live with justice and peace. Take care, be well.
Thank you, Tamara. I'm going to ask you to join me in a prayer, and then we'll, oh, and I'm seeing from people that there was trouble with the giving website. We'll try again later. We'll figure it out. Thank you for the news. Just want to pray, and then I'm going to do a reading to lead us into a time of silence. We sit together in stillness for 3 minutes to really be in touch with ourselves and let the words sink in deeply, find a moment's rest, face our fears, feel the spirit of love moving in us. And then we'll come out of that singing Spirit of Life in a new version from our choir, and the words will be up there for anyone who doesn't know the song. So please join me in a prayer. And whatever you understand the sacred dimension of life to be, the web of nature, or a being that watches over us, or the web of all connections, just love itself, the entirety of the wondrous universe. We can open to it just by acknowledging that it's real and opening in our hearts and our minds to feeling it flow through us. And when that happens, we say, thank you, Spirit of Life and Love, for joining us together and being found in us today, in a spirit of community, a spirit of hope, a spirit of change, of wellness. We're grateful for this day and all of its many blessings, for the whole web of life and human effort and ingenuity and love and care that lifts us up and helps us fulfill ourselves and move the world forward. Let us never take these blessings for granted, we pray. And we also pray to be blessings ourselves to the world. On this day, we lift up out of our concern with the deep longing to share courage and hope and comfort. We lift up those who have children or family members who are facing COVID or other illnesses. We lift up those among us who are grieving lost loved ones, a husband, a spouse, all who are facing eroding health or the challenges of age, terminal illnesses, whatever it may be. May we lift you up in the light of love and healing. For all who have felt the terrible sting of suicide, for anyone who has considered it or is even now, we pray that a wind of change and healing come to you. For all who have lost children to death or estrangement, we pray for our nation this day, as always, for our whole community, local and international, universal, praying for wise leaders, praying for change, praying for all of those who are working in the healing professions and trying to keep people safe, taking care of our children, essential workers of all kinds. And in the midst of all the chaos of the pandemic, we pray for those at war, who are hungry, who are homeless, praying that all may be at ease and their suffering end. May we remember all of those who came before us and cared for us. May we let the example that they set live in us as we turn ourselves back again in our imperfection to being servants of the good and the true. May love flow to everyone. Amen. And blessed be. I'm just going to ring the bell.
spiritual teacher teaches that fear is the feeling of estrangement from our true selves. My understanding is that we have a constructed self, an ego for shorthand, and a true self, a part of us inextricably unfolding the cosmic dance in the now, a part of us that is eternal, unharmable, and immovable. Fear is the feeling of estrangement from our true selves. Fear is living in estrangement from this immovable. 2020 brought a lot of change, and with it, plenty of fear, along with a lot of other stuff. On a positive note, I met a girlfriend, which is kind of new for me, honestly. In the past, I've had a few short-term girlfriends, a couple of random hookups, but I had never been in a committed, real relationship until this year. Bonnie, love you, babe. For 38 years, I dreamed of being in a committed relationship. And while I was dreaming about it, my life continued on. Energy that I would have given to a relationship, I placed into other areas of my life instead. Through these placements, I found a good enough constructed self-balance. My chronically single life wasn't so bad, but even in that relative security, I found myself insecure. When the relationship did come, a relationship different than anything I had dreamt of before, better, frankly, much better, I also found myself dealing with fear. Not overwhelming fear, but present fear. This caught me off guard. I thought this was supposed to be like the movies, all bright and dazzling, so much so that that old life could just kiss off. I'm ready for the next act, kind of thing. Turns out the new relationship threatened aspects of my egoic balance, of my constructed identity. With those threats came fear. I know who I am in that old life. In this new one, how could I know? This fear arising helped me understand my teacher's teaching. Fear is a feeling of estrangement from our true selves. What I found was that when I became afraid, my constructed self kicked in, fight or flight style, to resolve the situation. The threat triggered egoic self-defense, which pulls my identity into it. While my constructed self resolves the issue, I live from that place, estranged from my true self, and the understanding that in my truest, immovable form, nothing can actually harm me. Fear threatens my ego's efforts at security and identity. In reality, actual security and identity are held in our true selves. I have to keep reminding myself of that. And I find new ways to ferret pockets of energy away from my true self, still scared. Fear helps me identify the patterns and habits of the constructed self that stand in for the faith that ultimately, as my true self, I am eternal, unharmable, and immovable. Whatever may change in my external life, romantic relationship or no, there is no changing my true self. So far, most of the fear of the new relationship has subsided. Luckily, my partner unwaveringly supports my living in my true self. Win or lose, gain or loss, life or death, nothing can move the immovable. We can, however, move off it when fear invites us back into our constructed selves. When fear arises, I see my ego estranging me from my true self yet again. And yet again, I hear a call back to that true self, the eternal, unharmable, immovable trust that all will be well, and it will.
That delightful song from our choir is a traditional hymn to Mary, Mother Mary, sung in, if I say it correctly, the Quechua language of Peru, one of the indigenous languages of Peru. That was lovely. So when I was in, and I still can't believe I say it, 5th grade, my stepfather, David Gus Austin of beloved memory, took me, 5th grade, to see, of all movies, The Exorcist. This was in the days before really videos of any kind, and if you ever wanted to see a movie that you had missed or see it a second time, you basically had to hope that it played on television or came back into theaters. as a re-release. And now suddenly I feel very old to even have to be explaining that for anyone who might be from a generation that has only ever known, I want to watch this movie right now. Click, boop. Nope, he'd missed it the first time it had come through, I think. And needless to say, The Exorcist was not going to make it onto UHF on the afternoon monster movie matinee. So he really wanted to see it, and I don't know if I begged to see it for some reason or what made him think it was a good idea. Certainly, I don't think my mom was paying attention, but somehow I ended up sitting there watching The Exorcist. I won't say more about it. That movie scared the bejesus out of me. It was, at the time, one of the most graphic horror movies that had ever been made, crazy special effects, and it was about demon possession. And I had just gone through like confirmation process or something at my own church, my congregational church. That night I came home and slept clutching the Bible to my chest, thinking seriously about pasting the walls with Bible verses in order to keep my own self from being possessed by a demon. The feeling of that experience has stuck with me, bad memory and all, for all of these years. I mean, I can just feel, the physicality of that fear in me. And you know the physicality of fear that I'm talking about. One of our most basic emotions, and one of the emotions that most clearly illuminates the unity of our mind, body, heart system. Thoughts, feelings, body, all at once. And when it comes, you know it, we feel that feeling of fight, flight, or freeze. It compels one of those responses that's rooted way back in the amygdala and our reptile brain. And so at a certain point, probably when the poor young possessed girl's head turned fully around on her shoulders, I screamed, "I can't take it anymore!" And I ran from the theater. And after a few minutes of pacing and, gathering my breath, incredibly, I realized, but I have to know how it ends. And so I crept back and I watched pretty much the remainder of the movie through a little window that was in the door of the theater, like this. And that lifts up the fourth and maybe the best way of dealing with our fears, which is to face them. It's really the only way out is through. We've been living with so much fear lately. I mean, the never-ending low-grade fear of the virus is a physical burden we carry every day. I do. And I think for many of us, the politics of the last year, the last few months, the last few weeks lifted up, caught us deeply, deeply in fear. I don't think I realized, honestly, and I'm reasonably self-aware, how much I was carrying until Wednesday about noon. And now we can go back to fearing all of the other things we had been fearing before, like climate change, all those other good things. Or of how we're going to make it through these times of extraordinary uncertainty. How it's going to be when we step into the unknown, not knowing even what job we might have 6 months from now. Life is just filled with these moments, and learning to live with fear gracefully is one of the core spiritual exercises we must conduct. Again and again in our lives, we find ourselves, sometimes more dramatically than others, standing at the top of a ski slope. And you've already come halfway down, so there's no climbing back up. And you realize that looks a lot steeper than I think I can actually do. But you have to go down the hill. How can we do that? How can we face those feelings that arise right then and there? And pretty much, as with all the challenges of life, whatever we're facing with fear in our lives right now, we have to open to it with love and gentleness and curiosity. It is worth inquiring once we've taken a deep breath and recognized that we're afraid, what's really going on here? And so often, as Joe beautifully illustrated, it's thoughts, it's ideas, it's old stories, it's constructed self pieces that are standing in the way and making us feel afraid. There's a bunch of acronyms for fear. You get this in like 12-step stuff a lot, and they're very helpful. Fear is false or future evidence appearing real. In other words, if I go down the hill, I'm going to break my leg. But actually, I've gone down hills I didn't think I could go down many times, and I have never yet broken my leg. Or failure expected and received. You know you're going to fail, and so you make it so before you even try. Or fear finding excuses and reasons. Search fear acronyms. You'll have a day's worth of reflection. What these all indicate, though, is that those ideas are in the way. We need to be real about the fear that we're actually experiencing, but if we want to pass through, we open with love and gentleness and curiosity. In Buddhism, this is called inviting Mara to tea. We take those things that are our obstacles or barriers and we say, all right, I'm curious. I want to know what you're actually about here. You don't ask Mara to move in. You just ask Mara to tea, and then after you sit gently, reflectedly, and curiously with your fears, the time eventually comes to say, thanks for visiting. Bye now. In that regard, I might also say, sometimes it's okay to just turn MSNBC off for a few days. And we might wonder, is that asking Mara to move in? You see, we can't outthink our fears. We can't not actually have the experience. When we're faced with actual danger and our deep self knows it, fear will arise. Nelson Mandela said, I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. And that comes by facing it, understanding it. There's another system you might use, another acronym for fear: focus, expose, approach, and rehearse. You focus instead of freaking out. Oh my God, I'm afraid. So you take some deep breaths and you sit down and you return to the present. You return to the body. Expose is that same thing. What's really going on here? What's the old story? What need is unmet? You approach it instead of avoid it, and I like rehearse a lot as well. You just keep on practicing and keep on working it through. For many, that's like, what is the worst that could happen? I have done this. This is a very powerful method when standing on a great decision with uncertainty in front of you. What is the worst that could happen if I'm feeling called in this direction? I think we have an internal risk assessor that's actually pretty wise. I did this at the time of my divorce. I was afraid to make that decision. I knew it would lead to the happiness of everybody involved, comparatively speaking. But I needed to think my way through the fear of all the things that might go wrong. And so I sat one day and I thought all about what was the worst that could happen. And in that telling in my head, I would end up completely destroyed. The church turned totally against me, estranged from my children, and I myself would be eating breakfast on Saturday mornings at the Glazer Center. I thought that is the worst that could happen. And then, you start to think about that story a little more clearly and realize the many places where a likelier turnoff on that ski slope is going to appear. But also what I discovered when I thought it through that far was like, you know what? I'll take that chance. Because if I actually end up even homeless, at least sitting here right now in the midst of great warmth and privilege, I really do have faith in a thing in me that would not let that last for very long. That knows how to ask for help, that knows how to build networks and connection, that loves myself and loves the world too much to stay down for too long. If that strange act revealed that thing we most seek, that true self that Joe spoke of. And I mean, that thing has fantastic power, folks. In the Bible study class I taught a couple of weeks ago, we ended up talking about, how Jesus died, and then all those early Christians were persecuted so badly, and they themselves were frequently martyred in the most horrible ways, torn apart by animals. And one reason that Christianity spread was because those people actually stood there in the ring, and when a bear was going to eat them, because they so identified with Jesus, and because they had so touched something fantastically powerful in them, they would face those bears unafraid. It's not just Jesus. You can get at that power in a zillion different ways. But literally, people in the crowds would be like, what is up with those people? You can face a bear unafraid? I want some of that. And that's one reason that tradition took over that part of the world. If they could do that, then I can step into the unknown. You can step into the unknown. Any of us can call that person we've been afraid to call, or make those final arrangements and acknowledge that we will in fact die eventually, or go and get the vaccine, or turn off the TV, or turn it on if you need to. That we together, I mean, if they can face bears, we can make it through the pandemic. And we can also make it through this time of change in our congregation and our relationship, because we won't do any of that stuff alone. I went tiptoeing back to the window, and I got to see, finally, at last, Father Karras, the brave, imperfect, troubled priest, take the demons into himself, leap from the window, and fall down the stairs, saving the child. That crazy, scary movie had a happy ending after all. Perhaps the ones we're in right now do too. Maybe. Maybe if we face our fears, we can truly see everything is going to be okay.
When I'm uncertain, will you hold my hand?
Closing words, we will read in unison. They're number 694 out of the hymnal. These words are from Frederick E. Gillis. Please say them with me. May the love which overcomes all differences, which heals all wounds, which puts to flight all fears, which reconciles all who are separated, be in us and among us, now and always.